Hi guys, today I have the quick and easy steps for where you're going to want to use wood filler, spackling, or caulk on any wood paneling, crown molding, wainscoting, wood trim, baseboards, anywhere that you have wood trim in your house. The steps are basically the same. And as you can see from all of these pictures, I get a lot of practice in my house. I have a lot of traditional woodworking and millwork and finished carpentry in my home. I've installed most of it myself, and I maintain it. Today I'm working on this wall of built-ins that I'm putting into a game room in our house, and I'm going to show you how I do the wood filler and caulking on this wood paneling. So it's pretty easy, guys. It just takes time. I start by putting spackling or wood filler on all of the nail holes or any dents that you might have in the wood treatment. So you can do this to patch old woodwork like your old baseboards or trim around doors. If it's looking kind of shabby and it needs a little bit of an update, you can do this. You just want to use spackling or wood filler on the nail holes and any dents. Caulk goes where any two pieces of wood are meeting. So anywhere that two pieces of trim or two pieces of wood are meeting each other, two different pieces, you're going to use caulk there. So I start with spackling. I like spackling a little bit more than wood filler because it sands so much quicker and easier. So I applied the spackling with my fingers and I let that dry. Usually I let it dry for a couple hours. It can dry a lot faster on small nail holes, but I usually give it a couple hours to completely cure, and then I come back and sand it with a sanding block. Sanding blocks are great because they're flat, so when you're sanding a nail hole in a flat area, it can get that spackling really flush with your wood trim. Then I use a tiny sander like the micro zip that's in my hand, or just sandpaper wrapped around my finger to get into any grooves and detail work in molding like the cove molding here. I'll list everything that I use on wood paneling first as far as spackling and the caulk and the sanding stuff that I like to use in the description for this video below. After you've sanded anywhere that you've used the wood filler or the spackling, run your fingers or your hands across any of the spots that you've sanded to make sure it feels super smooth. You want that super smooth feeling before you paint anything, or it's going to show up in your paint. Once you have all of that sanded, you can dust it off with a clean dry rag and move on to caulking. You want to use a paintable interior grade acrylic latex caulk. The better quality caulk that you buy, the longer it's going to last. So spending 50 cents or $1 more on a tube is well worth it. I'll list the one I like in the description below. So after running a bead of caulk in a small area, I take my finger and run it along that caulk to push it into that gap between the two wood pieces. I like to have a wet rag with me whenever I'm doing a project like this to wipe away the excess caulk before it can dry. It's really important to make sure that you get any of the excess caulk off before it can dry, and that's going to start happening in a couple of minutes. So only work in small areas when you're doing this. The dampness on the cloth is great for removing the caulk, but it's also great for keeping your finger wet. That'll also help you guide that caulk across any of the openings. To get a really smooth finish with that caulk, you have to keep your finger wet when you're working with it. After filling all the joints, I let that dry overnight or for 5 or 6 hours. You're going to have a little bit of shrinkage in the caulking after that's done. So I come back in and do a second pass in any of the big gaps that you can see shrinkage in. So that spot right there needed extra caulking. So the next day I'm applying caulk exact same way. I just put a little bit of caulk in the area where I need it. I have my wet finger again and a wet rag that I am wiping away the excess caulk with. So I'm going for a super smooth look. And again, you can't sand this, so you have to get it looking perfect before it dries. That wet finger is going to slide against that or across that caulk and let you keep it really smooth and make it look perfect before it dries. You can keep washing that rag out if it keeps building up with caulk when you're doing projects like this. So as the rag's getting dirty and you don't have any clean spots left, just go rinse it off, wring it out a little bit, and go back to work on another section of the caulking. Caulking, wood trim, or any wood projects around your house is one of those things where the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. It just takes practice. You want to be careful when you're wiping away the excess caulk with a rag because you don't want to accidentally remove too much caulking. Again, though, this is something you get a feel for as you're working. Okay, here is a look at all of the spots that I used wood filler and caulking on. This is after the second pass of caulking, and as you can see, it looks perfectly smooth and ready to paint. So you cannot see anywhere where the wood joints meet, any rough areas. It is completely smooth and ready for paint, so let me show you how that looks now. Okay, after 2 coats of paint, this project is looking great. You cannot see any of the nail holes or anywhere that there is a gap. The caulk and the spackling has filled everything in, and this project is looking great. I have lots more videos from this project if you're interested in more DIY home remodeling projects. I'll put a link to some of those videos in the description below. Check them out. Let me know if you have any questions, guys, and thanks for watching this video.